Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Genghis Khan, Napoleon Bonaparte. The end of four great conquerors. Imagine a man who wept because conquering 2 million square miles wasn't enough for him. Alexander the Great, the ultimate glory seeker, cared for one thing: conquering the world. Fearless in battle, he hurled his army into the fray as though he were invincible. And why wouldn't he believe so? For 10 years, victory after victory followed him. While his men longed to return home and enjoy the spoils of war, Alexander had little interest in wealth or governance. Conquest was his only pursuit. His unstoppable streak continued until he encountered an obstacle in India. The battle against King Porus tested him like no other. He lost many men and was injured himself, even losing his beloved horse in the chaos. Yet despite the fatigue and losses, Alexander pushed on. Across the river lay another formidable Indian army, refreshed and ready for battle. While his own men were exhausted and demoralized, they pleaded for retreat to end the campaign and return home. For the first time, Alexander, the man who listened to no one, was forced to concede. This marked the beginning of his downfall. Known for his excessive drinking, he overindulged one night and fell gravely ill. Sensing opportunity, his generals gathered, eager to learn who would inherit his vast empire. When asked, Alexander famously responded, "To the strongest." His words ignited a power struggle among his generals that lasted nearly 50 years, tearing apart the Macedonian empire he had built. For Alexander, it had always been about one thing: himself. His decline was swift, paralyzed and declared dead by physicians. Greek historians claim that his body did not decompose for 6 days after death, proof, they said, that he was a god. Yet they missed a crucial detail. Modern scientists believe Alexander wasn't dead at all. He likely suffered from a neurological disorder that left him in a coma, fully aware but unable to move or speak. It's entirely possible that Alexander overheard the plots of those around him before he was buried alive. Next, we have the fanboy of Alexander, Gaius Julius Caesar. While Alexander wept because he had no more worlds to conquer, Caesar is said to have burst into tears while reading about Alexander's exploits. He remarked to his men, "When he was my age, he had conquered Darius, but up to now, nothing has been accomplished by me." Idolizing Alexander, Caesar became just like him, self-obsessed and narcissistic. Once he gained significant power as a general and statesman, Caesar undermined the Roman Republic, declaring himself dictator perpetuo, dictator for life. He wasn't shy about his ambitions either. Caesar is famously quoted as saying, "If you must break the law, do it to seize power." In all other cases, observe it. Senators in Rome feared he intended to establish a monarchy, which would erode their authority. On March 15th, 44 BC, a group of 60 senators assassinated him during a Senate meeting, stabbing him 23 times. Among the conspirators was Marcus Brutus, Caesar's adopted son and trusted ally. The last thing Caesar saw was Brutus standing among his attackers. This leads us into the medieval era, a time mostly known for the Crusades, but overshadowed by Genghis Khan, the Beast of the East. Khan managed to conquer twice as much land as Alexander and aimed to unite the world under his rule. Unlike Alexander or Caesar, however, Genghis Khan didn't view himself as a god or messiah. Instead, he fully embraced his tyranny, openly boasting, "The greatest happiness is to scatter your enemy, to drive him before you, to see his cities reduced to ashes, to see those who love him shrouded in tears, and to gather into your bosom his wives and daughters." Accounts of Genghis Khan's death vary. Some, like historian Rashid al-Din, claim he fell victim to the bubonic plague. Others, like Marco Polo, suggest he was shot while on horseback and died of his wounds days later. Another report even says he was fatally castrated by a princess of the Western Xia Empire, whom he had taken as a concubine. The details of his death remain elusive because it was intentionally kept secret. Before dying, Khan instructed his followers to conceal his death, as it occurred during a critical point in their conquest of the Western Xia Empire. That conquest, in Khan's eyes, was more important than his own grand funeral. Even after death, Khan's presence brought destruction. His followers slaughtered everyone along the route of his funeral procession to maintain the secrecy of his demise. Fast forward 5 centuries, and perhaps the greatest conqueror of all was Napoleon Bonaparte. The transition from swords and spears to artillery had occurred, and Napoleon was an undisputed genius in the art of war. Though he became emperor in the name of defending revolutionary France, it was clear his ambitions went far beyond that. His personality was arguably even more eccentric than the other great conquerors. While Caesar saw himself as the only messiah for his people, Alexander considered himself a god, and Genghis was a tyrant overlord of the steppes. Napoleon, on the other hand, saw himself as an artist of war. He is said to have remarked, "I love power, but it is as an artist that I love it." To him, the battlefield was a canvas, and he was the artist creating a masterpiece. His power of concentration and his memory for details were immense. Once, during a campaign in 1805, one of his subordinates couldn't find his division. While aides searched through maps, Napoleon told the officer the exact location of his unit, where they would be over the next 3 nights, their current strength, and the subordinates' military history. This came from an army of 7 corps, totaling 200,000 men, with every unit in constant motion. Yet it was all perfectly clear in Napoleon's mind. Napoleon swept through Europe and the Mediterranean, with his forces moving swiftly and decisively. However, as the stakes grew higher, the death toll mounted and the battles became bloodier. Eventually, his luck ran out at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, where he was defeated and captured by the British. Rather than execute him and risk making him a martyr, they placed him under house arrest with a few followers on the remote island of St. Helena. He spent the rest of his life in denial of his fallen status. At his dinner parties, he insisted that men wear military dress and women appear in evening gowns with jewels, recreating the image of the court he once commanded. Years of isolation and loneliness eventually took their toll, and on May 5, 1821, Napoleon died. His last words were a confession of everything dear to him. France, the army, head of the army, Josephine. In those final moments, he expressed his love for his country, his military career, and his first wife, Josephine. Thus ended the era of the 4 great conquerors. One died from illness, another was betrayed by his own men, an arrow felled Genghis Khan, and the artist of war died in captivity. Though they each left the world in different ways, they shared one common trait. They all died still longing for more.